Buongiorno.
Welcome back from Italy. Nice to see you here in the studio.
Grazie.
And you have a paisan.
I do. Dave Sullivan from Credit Technologies out of WSYM, Michigan is with us today to talk with us about some changes that are happening in the credit reporting system.
That's correct.
Credit scores. Michael Patrick was talking a little bit before we went on the air about how things have changed so much where it was too easy to get credit at one point in time, and now it's too hard. Can you shed a little light on that for us?
Yeah, at one time it was really easy to get credit, and I used to ride around with mortgage reps, and they would say, as long as they passed the mirror test, and that was when you held a mirror up to their nose and it fogged, they get a mortgage. Now it's much more difficult. Credit scores are much more important when you're trying to get a mortgage, and you really want to make sure that you can peak your score right before your loan.
And how do you do that? I mean, it's sort of indicating, I guess, whatever. It seems that if you pay cash for things, you're a good steward of your money and so forth, you're not going to have a very good credit score.
Yeah,
so how do you balance that?
People don't realize how many different things credit scores impact. I mean, it impacts your insurance. The IRS looks at your credit report. When you get a job, they look at your credit report. So
what does the IRS do with your credit score?
You don't want to know.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So
that's for another show.
Right. But, so people really need to pay attention to what their credit score is. And there's a lot of confusion over credit scores in the country. And part of that is self-inflicted. FICO has recently come out with a version 09 of their FICO score. And in the mortgage industry, we use something called 04. Unfortunately, the differences between 9 and 4 are substantial to the point where if you try to maximize your credit score for 09, you're actually going to hurt your credit score for 04. And 04 is used in the mortgage industry. So you have to be very cautious when you go about trying to improve your credit report. But I can give you 2 tips if you'd like.
I'd love it. Speak it to English to me because I don't understand what you're talking about.
I'm sorry. So the 2 things that you can do without really hurting your credit and improve your credit is, 1, pay down revolving balances. So revolving balances are things like your Visa, your MasterCard. You want to pay those things down to 5 to 9%. So a lot of people will say you should pay your bills at, keep your balances at 30 or 50%. And I say that that's probably incorrect, because the benefit you get is at the next 9%. So if you're keeping your balances at 50%, if you brought them just down to 49%, you'd get the improvement of that entire next category. So
is it better if people pay them off every month? Because some people just have credit cards for convenience. They pay them off at the end of the month. Is that hurting them or helping them?
Well, it's good to pay off your credit bills every month from a financial standpoint. But if you want to maximize your score, you want to keep the balances in between 5 to 9%. Because if you pay it to 0, you actually wind up hurting your credit score because the FICO scoring model looks at it like you're not using that account.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So is this why when you get a mortgage, they tell you don't do anything until you talk with your mortgage representative?
That's true, yeah. I mean, it's very, if you start paying off collections, you're actually going to hurt your credit score.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
See, that's what doesn't make sense because it's so contradictory to what you would think. So what are some things you said? You could pay down your revolving balance. What else can you do to improve your credit score?
So you want to pay down that revolving balance right before the statement date. And the statement date is the date that they report the information to the repository. The other thing you can do is reactivate old accounts. If you have an old account that you haven't used in a while, if you charge one thing on there and then keep the balance low, you reactivate and gain all that history. So those are the 2 things that you can do right before you apply for a loan.
So closing out a credit card that you don't use anymore is going to hurt you then?
Yeah. Length of credit history is the most important thing. So if you close out old accounts, you wind up shortening your credit history, and that can negatively impact you.
Okay. So how is the new credit reporting system going to affect mortgages? Is it going to make it easier or harder?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of articles written by the Realtors Association saying that FICO 9 is going to help people. And in reality, until Fannie and Freddie, who are the major buyers of mortgages, until they accept 09 or 08, it's really going to have no impact on the mortgage industry or the home buying industry.
Okay. What with some would say a stalled economic recovery right now, and they're talking about interest rates and, with keeping interest rates low, What are you seeing in the industry itself? I mean, is this going to continue for some time yet, or?
Well, I mean, it's going to be more and more difficult to get a mortgage. As the Frank Dodd Act continues to be rolled out, it's going to get harder and harder to get a mortgage. So you're going to want to be on top of the process as much as you can. So you want to maximize your credit score. You want to get all the documentation together that you need. It's going to be more and more difficult to get a mortgage, but you need to go to a professional, and Cindy is obviously one of those
Sure.
type of people. You need
So
to
if somebody's thinking maybe I want to buy a house in a year or so, the days are gone where you could just say, hey, honey, let's go to an open house this Sunday and buy a home.
Yeah.
It's going to be more difficult.
It is much more difficult, much more documentation to get a mortgage now than ever before. They're much more conservative from a value perspective. So the appraisals are coming in lower than they have before. I'm sure you're aware of that. Inventory, I think, is still a problem in Michigan and in some parts of Michigan where there's not enough inventory. So the mortgage process is more difficult. You should prepare as much as you can before you enter in the process.
One of the things that I always tell people is, or ask them when they call on a home, have you been pre-approved for a mortgage yet? Well, no, but I know I'm not going to have any trouble. And that's the most difficult thing. I have to tell them we need to go talk with someone first because the rules have changed.
Yeah, so true.
Well, you just did it here.
We did.
And you can hear it again at mibigshow.com if you want to hear the podcast all over again or share it with your friends. Dave Sullivan, Credit Technologies, Kim LaForette from the LaForette team at Coldwell Banker, Hubble Briarwood. Thank you very much.